Welcome to Division with the Powers of 10, Part 2. Today we're going to learn a little trick when we're dividing with 10, okay? So, in the last video we learned that each time we divide, we subtract a 0 to the right, okay? So the place value of the 1 moves one place value to the right, okay? And if the divisor is larger than the dividend, then the answer will be a fraction or decimal, okay? Just like we saw with that Powers of 10 movie, all right? But can this help us with other problems? Well, sometimes, okay? So, division is a little trickier than multiplying. The trick we learned when multiplying with the Powers of 10 works all the time, no problem. With division, it doesn't always work so simply, okay? So the trick we are going to learn today works if two of the following things are true. The dividend is greater than the divisor. Remember that means that the number that's going to be divided is greater than the number dividing it, okay? So the dividend is greater than the divisor. We're going to do the trick we're getting ready to learn, okay? So examples, if we have a problem like 250 divided by 50, well, 250 is the dividend. It's greater than 50, which is the divisor, so everything's okay. But if we have a problem like 50 divided by 250, well, the dividend is smaller than the divisor, which is 250. So we can't do our trick. We'll need another trick, and we'll learn that later in the year. All right? It's a little much to learn all at one time. Okay? Also, we need to make sure that the dividend is divisible by the divisor. Okay? What does that mean? Well, you need to have something like 90 divided by 30. Okay? And that 90 can be divided by 30 into equal groups. Okay? If it can be divided into equal groups, it's divisible, we can do our trick. But if we have something like 80 divided by 30, you can't split 80 into 30 equal groups. It doesn't work, okay? And our trick isn't going to work. We need long division for that, which we'll learn later on, all right? So right now, as long as the dividend is greater than the divisor, and the dividend is divisible by the divisor, we can do the trick we're going to learn. If you have to say no to one of those, well then we're going to have to do some other tricks we'll learn later on, okay? So first step we're going to do is ignore these zeros, all right? And we're only going to focus on the 24 and the 6, okay? Then we're just going to divide the numbers that we see, all right? So 24 divided by 6 is 4, all right? And you can check that by thinking backwards. 4 times 6 is 24, all right? So the problem works. Then the next step, kind of like we did with multiplication, except a little bit backwards, we are going to subtract the number of zeros in the divisor, remember this is the divisor, from the number of zeros in the dividend. Remember this is the dividend, okay? And we're going to put that number of zeros on the quotient over here, okay? So let's see what that looks like. So we're going to look at the zeros. We have 1, 2, 3 zeros in the dividend. So write 3 zeros. Later on you can do this in your head, okay? In the divisor we have 1 0, so put 1 0. And this time we're going to subtract them, not add them, subtract them. So 3 minus 1 is 2 zeros, all right? Now that we know we got 2 zeros, we're going to put those 2 zeros on the end of our quotient, and our answer is that 24,000 divided by 60 is 400, all right? And with a little bit of practice, you'll be able to do all of that in your head. Okay, the next problem we're going to look at is 300,000 divided by 600. This one we're going to follow the same steps, but it's going to be just a little bit different, because watch what happens when we ignore the zeros. Okay, we got 3 divided by 6. Now, if you think back to the beginning, our trick only works if the dividend is bigger than the divisor. Well, is this dividend bigger than the divisor? No. So maybe we can't do this problem with the tricks we've learned, but we're just going to double check one thing. If I don't ignore all the zeros, but just ignore the last 4, okay, 30 is bigger than 6. Okay, so now our dividend is greater than our divisor. And let's think, is 30 divisible by 6? Can we divide 30 into equal groups by 6? Well, actually, yes, we can. Okay, so now we can continue with our trick. All right, so 30, we're going to focus on this 30 now. So we're going to ignore almost all the zeros, but not one of them. All right, so 30 divided by 6 is going to be our problem. All right, so the next step we're going to divide, and 30 divided by 6 is, of course, 5. Okay, and to double check that, we're going to think 5 times 6 is what? Well, 5 times 6 is 30. Okay, so far so good. And then our last step again, we are going to subtract the number of zeros in the divisor by the number of zeros that we still have left in the dividend. Now notice in the dividend, I'm putting just 4 zeros because we had to use one of those zeros with a 30. All right, so we have 4 left. So we got 4 zeros in the dividend and 2 zeros in the divisor. We subtract those and we get 2 zeros. And 500 is our answer. Okay, so 300,000 divided by 600 is 500. Okay, and you can also check that by using the trick we learned with multiplication. Okay, so if we did this all backwards, well, we would multiply the 500 times the 600. We'd ignore the zeros for a moment. I think 5 times 6 is 30. We'd put the 30. And then we count the zeros. We got 2 zeros there, 2 zeros there. Okay, so 2 zeros plus 2 zeros is 4 zeros. If we put 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros, we then get 300,000. So we can double check our division problems by multiplying it with the exact same rules that we learned in the other video. Okay, this also helps us see that multiplication and division are really the same thing, just going backwards. Okay, so divided by 10, first, check to see that the trick we just learned works. And it works if the dividend is greater than the divisor and the numbers are divisible. Also, if that's true, then just ignore the zeros, then divide, and then subtract the number of zeros in the divisor from the number of zeros in the dividend. Put that number of zeros on the quotient, and you'll be able to solve a lot of division problems. Not all of them, because if they don't work for our trick, then you can't. But this will work for a lot of division problems, and you'll be able to divide huge numbers all in your head.